Lisa. Hi, Lisa. We've been praying for you. Linda, good to see you. Sure appreciate everybody coming on this morning, this March 27th, 2018, with a slow soaking rain that we're so blessed by. Things are getting so green. I love the springtime. Today's reading is powerful. I'll just get right to it. I've read it, a portion of it 3 different times. And I'm glad I did, because God really, really, really drove some things home for me today. On the corner of my Bible that I read when I'm not on my phone, it has space for being able to write things in the columns. And what I wrote this morning in the column is 2018. Today's reading is about our thoughts. And as I was going through today's reading, and the word nation, that God will give you the nations, or God will have you destroy the nations, the word nations represented my bad thoughts for me. I don't know how that happened. It just happened this morning. And so if you go back and read today's reading with the idea that when he says he'll destroy the nations, he's telling you that he will destroy the thoughts, the wrong thinking. You know, most of us, our entire life would be totally different if we could change our thoughts. And the problem is that we think we have to change our thoughts instead of allowing God to change our thoughts. So as we go through this, I want us to keep that in mind. Once again, this is Deuteronomy chapter 7 and 8. This is Moses' last message to the Israelites before he goes on to heaven to be with God. It's the important things. He's reiterating to them the important things, the things he wants them to know. And again, as I said this morning as I was reading it, I felt like this whole reading this morning was talking to me about my thoughts, about allowing God to change my thoughts, is what I felt like this was about this morning. So keep with that in mind. Let's go through. I want to start in Deuteronomy 7, verse 7. This is a powerful, powerful scripture right here that says that the Lord did not set his heart on you and choose you because you were more numerous, or you were bigger and better, for you were actually the smallest of all. So he's telling us that he didn't choose you because you're the best at anything. He didn't choose you because you were the biggest. He's actually talking to them about the nations, because he's talking to the Israelites as a nation here. But he's talking to us in that he didn't choose Brooke because Brooke's the very, very best at typing, or she's the very, very best at communicating, or she's the very, very best at sewing. I wish I knew something she's not good at, because Brooke was good at everything. So, so I picked a good one. Okay, so she says she's not good at sewing, but he didn't pick you because you're the best at anything. He in fact, he picked you because you were the smallest, meaning that you were the least equipped. It's, the Bible tells us that in our weakness, he's made strong. And in the New Testament reading today, there's such a great example of this. A woman, an immoral woman, came and brought her jar of expensive perfume and set at Jesus's feet, and sprinkled that perfume on his feet. And the Lord actually saw her already as forgiven. He didn't push her away. He didn't say, "Ooh, where have your hands been? What have you been doing?" He loved on her, and he let her love on him in a pure way, in a spiritual way, and he didn't see her as awful at all. He didn't see her as awful. And that's what he's saying to us in Deuteronomy 7:7. He didn't call you because you're the best at anything. He didn't even call you to be the best at what he called you to be. He called you to allow him to be in you. And it's in our weaknesses that he's made strong. I could go on and on and on about that, because most of us when we're seeking our purpose and we don't know what purpose we have in the world and we don't know why God's called us or even that God has called us, it's because those thoughts, because once again, I'm telling you, this is about our thoughts. Our thoughts tell us, oh no, he doesn't want me to have an insurance agency. I don't know anything about insurance. Oh no, he doesn't want me to minister to the homeless downtown because I don't know anything about the homeless. I don't even know the first thing to say to him. He doesn't want me to, whatever it is. I mean, the reason why you don't believe you've got a purpose is because you don't believe that you're equipped for anything, and you've got it backwards. He calls you and then he equips you. It's not about what you're capable of doing on your own. It's about what you're capable of doing with him through you. And with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. That's just so powerful. I love reading that. I'm going to go on down to verse 9. Understand, therefore, that the Lord your God is indeed God. He is the faithful God, and he keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations and lavishes his unfailing love on those who love him and obey his commands. This is all in Deuteronomy. It's all about obedience. It's all about obedience. Under the new covenant, it's all about the faith in who Jesus Christ is. It's all obedience to the laws. In the old covenant, it's all about our belief and our love for Jesus Christ. And so here's the promises. That's why I love this book so much. It's Moses handpicking what he knows and what he's heard from God, and telling those that he's given his entire life to as his parting words. And so what a promise that his covenant, he'll keep his word for you for 1,000 generations. Do we worry about our children? Do we worry about our grandchildren? I mean, right there's a promise to stand on. To stand on. I don't have to worry. In fact, when I worry, I'm sinning against God. How many times does he have to promise us that his unfailing love will never cease, that he'll keep his covenant for 1,000 generations and lavish his unfailing love on those who love him and obey his commands? And then verse 13, he will love you and bless you, and he will give you many children. Verse 14, you will be blessed above all the nations of the earth. Now, again, I'm telling you, nations also signifies my thoughts that are contrary to God. So now it begins. You will be blessed, Elizabeth, above all of your thoughts that are not of me above the earth. See, it's my thoughts that keep me from believing what I'm reading right here. I mean, if the whole book of Deuteronomy, if we would just pick out the promises he's given us, that ought to be enough to sustain us for the rest of our life. And yet we doubt. Oh, I've messed up too much. Oh, I'm just not good enough. Oh, I just make too many mistakes with Carrie. Oh, I just fail my kids. Oh, I fail my husband. Oh, I'm just not, if I was just better at business. Oh, if I was just better at maintaining my house. If I was just better at, and he's already told us that he chose us because we're not better at. He just got through telling us that I didn't choose you because you're good enough for Tom. I didn't choose you because you'll make every good decision with Carrie. I didn't choose you because you'll be the best at anything. I chose you because you're not. You're not. And yet it's our thoughts. It's our thoughts that keeps us from walking in the glory that Jesus died to give us every day. And 15, and the Lord will protect you from all sickness. I mean, where would we be today if we just believed that? It's in black and white. And the Lord will protect you from all sickness. But what happens when flu season comes around? Oh my gosh, I mean, get the flu shot. You've got to run and hide and don't get out around anybody. I mean, it's all over the news. I mean, what if we just believe that? And the Lord will protect you from all sickness. And he's already told us that he'll keep the same covenant for the 1,000 generations. So if he'll keep us from sickness, he'll keep our children from sickness. That's the reason I say to you what I say to you. Healed. No, 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 no. Don't accept all sickness. He doesn't leave anything out of the all. Kelly, and he's on with us. All, Kelly Blankenship, all. All sickness. He will not let you suffer from the terrible diseases that you've known in the past, but he will inflict them on all of your enemies. You must destroy all the evil thoughts that the Lord your God hands over to you. When he starts showing you your wrong thinking, you've got to allow him to destroy them. You will destroy all the wrong thinking that the Lord your God hands over to you. Show them no mercy. Show those evil thoughts no mercy. And do not worship their gods, or they will trap you. I mean, we spend more time obsessing over what will go wrong than we spend in time worshiping the Lord. We do. All of us are guilty of it. That's why this is so powerful to me today. I've never had him reveal this to me like this today. Perhaps you will think, oh, there it is. Perhaps you will think to yourselves, how can we ever conquer these thoughts that are so much more powerful than we are? But don't be afraid of them. Just remember what the Lord your God did in your past. All of the great things he's done for you. Verse 19, towards the end of it, the Lord your God will use this same power against all the people you fear, or against all the thoughts you fear. He'll use the same power of all those, in verse 19, it says, remember the great terrors the Lord your God sent against them. You saw it with your own eyes, and remember the miraculous signs and wonders, and the strong hand and powerful arm in which he brought you out of Egypt. All of the miracles, he's reminding them of all of the wonderful things that he'd done in the past. And he's saying that he'll use that same power against the people you fear or against the thoughts that you fear. You can put in here anything that causes you to doubt God. Anything that causes you to doubt, he's saying he'll use that same power to cast them off of you. So verse 21, no, do not be afraid of those thoughts. For the Lord your God is among you, and he is a great and awesome God. The Lord your God will drive those thoughts out of your head, out ahead of you, little by little. You will, and then here it is. I've got this checked mark. You will not clear them away all at once. Otherwise, the wild animals would multiply too quickly for you. You will not clear them away all at once. Otherwise, the wild animals would multiply too quickly for you. What that said to me, because he's talking to me about my thoughts, is that I want just a quick fix. I want it just to be done. I want it to just, just wave your magic wand, God, and all my thoughts are clear and they're pure and they're righteous and holy, and I don't ever suffer from any of those thoughts again. And he tells us right here that you will not clear them away all at once. Otherwise, wild animals will multiply too quickly. Wild animals just represents the evil things that will come back in its place. You know, I replace one bad thought for another bad thought if I don't take my time and if I'm not rooted in and I don't have something to replace the void of what those thoughts are to begin with. There's those of us that are so obsessed with worrying and fear and hurt and resentment and pain and loss that if all of those things was taken away so quickly, there wouldn't be anything left in our brain. It'd just be a void. I believe that. And then if it's a void, then it's a stronghold for the enemy to come back in and plant even worse thoughts. So it's a process, and we have to understand and be comfortable with the process that he's taken us through. It's not an overnight fix, and we're not going to get from point A to B just by snapping our fingers and making it happen. But the Lord your God will hand them over to you. He will throw them into complete confusion until they are destroyed. And again, for me this morning, it was about my thoughts. Whatever your enemy is. And for me right now, my thoughts have been my enemy. And oh man, he showed me some powerful stuff this morning about just my level of peace. And what I was perceiving and thinking as chaos of my day, running from the time I start in the morning. I start one thing and I go right into another, into another, into another, into another, into another. And oftentimes, unless I force myself, I'm not breaking to even take time to sit alone and drink a cup of coffee. I don't take time to take some quiet time and take a lunch break. And then last night, my interaction with other people didn't stop until 11 o'clock. All day long yesterday till 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, it was quiet time. And so I've been tossing these thoughts about how I'm doing it wrong and how I'm missing it and how I should be and what I ought to be doing. And through this reading this morning, through this reading about my thoughts is a slight little shift in the heavenlies, actually in my brain, had happened to me, that I was spending more time thinking about what I was doing wrong, creating all of it, instead of pursuing peace. And it's just a subtle little shift. And I'm telling you, you got to be right there with me spiritually to get what I'm saying. This will fall on deaf ears for some. It was a subtle little shift that I was letting my thoughts breed and create chaos instead of allowing my thoughts to just be in perfect peace. Just the heavenly shifted for me this morning. And it lifted off of me just from reading these. And that's how he works. And if I hadn't taken the time to read extra this morning, if I had just done my normal routine of just opening this book and reading it just quick enough to get on the video this morning, I wouldn't have got that this morning. See, this isn't really just about fulfilling an obligation that, oh, we're on day 86 of our reading. That's not what it is about. Stilling ourselves, S-T-I-L, stilling ourselves to the point that we're allowing that Spirit to abide in us and we abide in him. And then he reveals all and he gives us his wisdom and he replaces those anti-thoughts to good thoughts. Anything not of God thoughts to godly thoughts. And this morning I choose to abide in peace. See, peace is all around me. Every one of you that walked into this house this morning, because you're his, you brought peace with you. You brought peace with you. You brought peace with you. Tom woke up with peace this morning. It was my thoughts that kept me from entering into that. But now I can enter into it. And I just feel a whole difference in my entire being this morning. Praise God. Thank you, Lord. Verse 24, no one will be able to stand against you and you will destroy them all. No thought will be able to stand against me and all of my bad thoughts will be destroyed. Whew. On down to chapter 8, verse 1. Be careful to obey all the commands I'm giving you today. Then you will live and multiply, and you will enter and occupy the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors. See, the land just represents whatever promise you have. So what's your call? Have you been called to raise a child? Have you been called to build a business? Have you been called to clean houses? Have you been called to be a wife and a mother? Have you been called? What is your call? And we can have more than one call in our life at any point in time. And we have calls that are for seasons. I was called to be a mother for the season of being a mother. I've been called a second time now to be a mother. I've also been called to have a ministry called Candle Ministries with the Dream Big Girls retreats. I've been called to run a business alongside of my husband. What have you been called to do? That represents the land that he promised to give you. See, if he promised, if he called you, there's a promise behind that call. If he called you to save the lost, that every single time somebody turns back towards God, you've been given the land he promised you. Every single time you're successful in making this house shine, you've fulfilled that call. That's a promise. And that represents the land that he's given you. So now that I've said that, be careful to obey all the commands I'm giving you today. Then you will live and multiply, and you will enter and occupy the land the Lord swore to give you, the promise that he's given you, the fulfillment of the call he's given you. Verse 4, for all these 40 years, your clothes didn't wear out and your feet didn't blister or swell. Of course, he's talking to the Israelites. Their clothes didn't wear out. Their feet didn't blister. They didn't even swell because, they didn't have these nice Nike shoes that they could wear, these $200 tennis shoes on their feet back then, and their feet didn't blister, didn't swell. So what's he saying to us with that today? He's saying, remember when? Remember when I restored you? Remember when I healed you? Do you remember when I answered that prayer? Do you remember when you had enough money in your checkbook when you didn't think you was going to? Do you remember when you felt me fill you so full of love that you thought it was the greatest experience you've ever had in your life? Do you remember when? He's telling you to remember. For all these 40 years, your clothes didn't wear out. And verse 7, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land. He's fulfilling the call on your life. Flowing streams and pools of water with fountains and springs that gush out in the valleys and the hills. That's just a description of what if. What if the call in your life was fulfilled 1,000% and it all went well? What would it look like? That's the picture of it right there. Whatever it is, he's telling you. He's telling you, for the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land of flowing streams. But it's bringing, not brought, but bringing. That's that process again. Just like he told us over here, you will not clear them away all at once. Otherwise, the wild animals would multiply too quickly. It's a process of him bringing you in. Every day we get a little bit closer and closer to it. It is a land where food is plentiful and nothing is lacking. I mean, what if we woke up today with the revelation knowledge that we know, not just faith, not just, well, I believe, but I know right now today I lack nothing. How would we change our behavior for the rest of today? What would change? I lack nothing. I lose my place when I get to talking. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land of flowing streams and pools of water with fountains and sprigs that gush out in the valleys. In verse 8, it is a land of wheat and barley, of grapevines, fig trees, pomegranates, of olive oil and honey. See, he's naming all of the things that made them rich back then. The most abundant life he could describe is what he's describing to them. It is a land where food is plentiful and nothing is lacking. It's a land where iron is as common as stone and copper is abundant in the hills. When you have eaten your fill, and here it comes, when you have eaten your fill, be sure to praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. And here's our caution in verse 11, but that is the time to be careful. Beware that in your plenty you do not forget the Lord your God and disobey his commands, regulations, and decrees that I'm giving you today. For when you have become full and prosperous and have built fine homes to live in, and when your flocks and herds have become very large and your silver and gold have multiplied along with everything else, be careful. Do not become proud at that time and forget the Lord your God who rescued you from the slavery of your thoughts. Do not forget that he led you through great and terrifying wilderness of thoughts, and its poisonous snakes that were your thoughts, and the scorpions that were your thoughts, where it was so hot and dry. He gave you water from a rock. He fed you with manna in the wilderness, a food unknown to your ancestors. He did this to humble you and to test you for your own good. He did all this so you would never say to yourself, I have achieved this wealth with my own strength and my own energy. Remember the Lord your God. He is the one who gives you power to be successful, to fulfill your purpose. The reading says to fulfill your covenant, because we're reading Old Testament reading, but we're New Testament saints. So what he's saying to us today is he is the one that gives you the power to be successful in order to fulfill your purpose, to fulfill your call. Man, that's powerful readings today. I love Deuteronomy. I love the love letter he's given us. And then Luke chapter 7, again, is the woman that come and knelt at his feet. And I've already pretty well said it, that, you know, he didn't even see her as immoral when she came and knelt at his feet and she humbled herself. What a picture of what we have to do in order to not be proud, in order to not think it's what we do. We have to humble ourselves and be willing to wash the feet of those that are around us, to give up our very last drop of wealth, our very last drop of provision, the last 10 cents or the last 2 pennies, as the woman who came to the temple and dropped her last 2 pennies in the offering cup did. I mean, are we really at a point that would empty out our checkbook? Would we empty out what's in our checking account right now for God? Would we? I mean, a homeless person comes and they have a need, or a single mama comes and she's got a need, or, I mean, I could give you 1,000 scenarios. God just said, what if it's somebody that on the surface, it doesn't look like there's a need. It looks as though, well, they drive a fine car and they have a job and God says, give everything that's in your checking account. Or are you there? Is that where we're at? Because that's what this woman did. They say that expensive perfume was more than a year's worth of wages back then. And she just poured it on his feet. And they just thought it was such a waste. Such a waste. I don't know about y'all, but I got a long ways to go to get to that humble spot that this woman was at. Oh, Lord, I'm yours. Take it out of me. Get it out of me if it's not of you, Father. Get that pride out of me. Get that self-doubt out of me. And then the Psalms, save me, O God, for the floodwaters are up to my neck. Deeper and deeper I sink in the mire. And once again, this is thoughts. This is thoughts. Have you ever had thoughts of, oh my gosh, I'm sinking. Oh my gosh, they're going to eat me up. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it. I can't find a foothold. I'm in such deep water and the floods are overwhelming me. Have you ever had those thoughts? And I'm so exhausted from crying for help that my throat is parched. My eyes are swollen from weeping, waiting for my God to help me. Those who hate me without cause outnumber the hairs on my head. Those are all thoughts. Those are thoughts. In David's day, he had that many people that hated him and had swords drawn to kill him. But this, for us today, represents the thoughts we think. We get our feelings hurt because so-and-so didn't speak to us. Oh, well, they passed me in the hall and they didn't even say hello. Oh, well, you know, that's the third person that has rejected me this week. Oh, they all hate me. Nobody likes me. Well, nobody's called me. My kids haven't called me. My kids don't come to see me. I'm in deep water. The floods are just overwhelming me. The bills just keep stacking up. And it just goes on and on and on. And our thoughts just keep going on and on and on. That's what the theme was today. Then Proverbs 12:1, to learn, you must love discipline. It is stupid to hate correction. I mean, he just tells it like it is. I don't know that there's any of us that likes correction. Well, I guess if we're his, we do. And you know what? We really do get to that point when we do humble ourselves and we do say, Lord, things like I just said, if it's in me, get it out. Well, you know what? It's going to take some correction in me. And if I hate correction, I'm not going to allow that to happen in my mind. My thoughts will not be renewed if I'm not able to allow God to correct me. You know, I've often said, let's just go back to the glaring sins that everybody knows is a sin, cussing like a sailor, whatever, because I'm not even, anyway, the immoral woman to Christ wasn't immoral. So it's hard for me even to go there. But when he starts getting into the nitty gritty into my business, about how much did you exaggerate that story, Elizabeth? Oh. Well, Elizabeth, you got on the video last week and said, and then you just, was messing in my business. Yes, Lord. Yes. And then in that moment, I have to humble myself and say, bring it on. If I don't, I'm going to start backing up, because there is no stalemate in the kingdom of heaven. He doesn't just leave us alone and let us stay where we are. We're either going to be backing up in our thoughts, or we're going to be moving forward in transformation, in the renewing of our minds. And I choose to move forward even when it's painful, because when he starts messing in my business and he starts showing me the thoughts that aren't of him, it gets painful. And I put my hand up to the resin or to the fire, for the purification, and it burns, and I want to pull back, and I never want to go to that fire again. But we have to be willing to go through it for that purification to take place. So thank you guys for joining me today.